at this time, I would like to welcome the President and CEO of the San Antonio Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Richard Bettis.
Good morning, everyone. I'm very excited to have so many of you join us for this important topic. In fact, there's over 100 with us this morning, so thank you all for tuning in. And the topic, of course, is balancing the unprecedented blending of our home life, our work lives, and the educational lives of our children. The collective experience we are all going through during this pandemic is important to acknowledge. This experience is hitting every single one of us in very different ways. As I talk to members of our business community, the conversations start with a new awareness about the importance of checking in with one another. The next thing that always comes up is the health and well-being of our employees. So many of our members are also wading into the new waters of adjusting business operations and figuring out how to support employees as they incorporate distance learning into their workdays. The business community has a fundamental understanding of the importance of educating the young people in our community. This understanding and the recognition of how hard it has been for parents and caregivers to incorporate schooling into their homes is the reason we are hosting this webinar today. There is no doubt that this new normal is stressful and uncertain. But this new normal also has brought out the best in all of us and what we can do to support one another. Before I introduce our guest speaker, I want to thank my team at the San Antonio Chamber of Commerce for learning the ins and outs of virtual meetings and events. Your teamwork and leadership have reached a new level of excellence during this public health crisis. Finally, I want to again remind you all to utilize the Q&A feature for submitting questions and comments. We will work with our speaker after the event to respond to any questions we are not able to get to during the webinar. And now, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I'm excited to introduce our guest speaker, Ravae Villafranca Shaeffer. Ravae is the Coordinator for Strategic Partnerships and Innovation at Education Service Center, Region 20. There, she strives to connect K-12, higher education, and workforce systems to innovate education solutions for the entire region. She is an educator and administrator by training and is a former social studies teacher from Southside ISD and Northside ISD. Ravae earned her BA in political science from Texas A&M University, her Master of Arts degree in curriculum and instruction from UTSA, and is currently pursuing her superintendent certification at UTSA. Oh, and by the way, she was admitted last week to the PhD program in educational leadership at UTSA. Ravae, congratulations. She currently serves as the chair for the San Antonio STEM Council, co-lead for the Alamo STEM ecosystem, a board member for Workforce Solutions Alamo, the Alamo Academies, and the Alamo STEM Workforce Coalition. The light of her life and the joy in every day comes from her family. Casey, her husband, her two children, Kyle and Marin. Ravae, thank you for joining us. The screen is yours.
Richard, thank you so much to the San Antonio Chamber and to your amazing team for creating this opportunity for all of us. And thank y'all for joining and for listening in. So I'm going to share with you a few things, and then we're going to have a really good opportunity to connect on any questions that you might have. So let me just go ahead and dive right in. So the reality is that we are looking for balance in working and schooling at home, and it is rough, and it's rough for everyone. So let me share a little bit about our organization. So I work for the Education Service Center at Region 20, and in the state of Texas, there are 20 education service centers that were designed in the 1960s by the legislature. And really our intent is to support guidance and mandates that come from the Texas Education Agency and from the legislature, and provide support for school districts. So on the screen, you can see the 19 counties that we serve. So we're quasi-government agency and nonprofit. And our intent is to provide services, training, solutions, be an education solution seeker, solution finder, and supporter for our school districts. So with that in mind, I wanted to give you a little bit of the quick facts about the geographic area that we serve as Region 20. This is coming from some 2018-2019 data. So in this region, we have over 477,000 students, over 63,000 school staff, and that's all staff. Anyone serving a student in a school building is considered school staff, and 87 school districts and charters. So as you can see, we are pretty busy in the region, and we are so pleased to be able to serve this entire region and all of the districts in it. So let me go ahead and get started with a couple of things. So I want to give you kind of a high-level overview of where we're heading. So the big picture is we're going to talk about the here's what, the so what, and then now what. So we'll look at those three pieces today. And then we'll talk quite a bit about some tips that may support you in what you are deciding to do in your balance at home. So right now, all I want to ask you to do is to just pause for a moment, take a really deep breath through your nose and out your mouth. And I'm going to do it too. Drop your shoulders and just kind of be present in this moment. All you have to do right now is listen and receive. Don't worry about writing anything down. I know the Chamber will provide all the resources you need. Just receive it and take as many seeds as you can from what we share today. So the here's what is this. We're in a pandemic. No one's been here before. Everybody is flying the plane and building it at the same time. And everybody's in the same situation right now. So the most important thing that I've heard from our community the most often is that we're in this together. This is new for all of us, and so we're all in it together. So what does this mean for our kids? Well, I've got a nice healthy list of things that this could mean for our children. On the left side of this list are what they might be feeling or what they might be experiencing. And so really consider this to be a traumatic event in your children's life. And while it's not presenting itself right now in your children, they might still be smiling and playing and getting frustrated with their siblings and you, just like always. But this is a traumatic experience for them. They've lost quite a bit. They've lost opportunity to be with their friends, the love they have for their teacher, and those hugs and high fives that they give every day. They might be feeling quite frustrated and they're not sure why. And so it's really important to think about what they might be experiencing, that in the moment you're in, you might not recognize it, but it is the context for a lot that's happening in their life. So think about that in terms of what might be negatively impacting your children. On the positive side, so on the right side of the screen, you'll notice some stars. These are some things that in kids' minds or in our minds as parents, we might see as a real positive for our kids. So unstructured learning time for some parts of the day, and some freedom to explore, maybe do some passion project investigation. They have a little more control over some things in their life, and so do we as parents in the home or grandparents or caretakers. There's more opportunity for family time a little more immediately. I know for me, I don't have the 35 to 45-minute drive home, and so that is another hour I get back to what I like to joke with my kids is to harass them. And really that's just connecting with them, finding ways to experience with their experience and understanding what they're doing in their day. And so there are blessings and curses to that. And, you know, there's more time for games, more time to be on their device. And so these are all things to really consider in what they're experiencing in their day that is a new normal for a short period of time. So that is the here's what. What's most important for us in our home is to really think about what our primary job is. Relationships come first. That is the most important thing that we can put on our radar all day, every day. Our job is to love our children. And so the most important thing we want to do as parents is to show love and patience to them. And one of the ways that we can do that is really to communicate often while listening really carefully. And as Richard said, checking in on them, checking in on others, be silly with them. And when you're trying to figure out what's going on or in their lives or what they've been doing academically or in practice with their teams on Zoom or on Skype or Google Meet or Google Hangout, ask them some open-ended questions while you're doing other stuff. Like while you're cooking and maybe asking them to chop some vegetables, ask them some just general questions. So what was something wonderful you did today? What was something crazy you did today? What did you like the best about what you did today? Just ask some open-ended things and see where it goes. And I'll give you some other tips about that as well a little bit later. Offer them comfort and reassurance. Every feeling they have is normal. So help them to know that every feeling they're having, every frustration, anxiety, fear they have is normal. They are going to be okay. They are going to get back to school and their friends and their family members that they're disconnected from right now. One thing you might consider doing, and we try to do this as a family once a day, is to get in the car and drive around. Drive by schools, drive by the grocery store, just drive by places to show that things are still moving forward in their community. Things are still standing. The school building is still there. Church is still there. Grandma's house is still there. And you can wait from 6 feet away, drive by familiar places that they're used to seeing in their regular day and reassure them, look, things are still there. Our priest is still there. Our family is still there. Let's say hi and connect for a minute and then head back home and be safe to stay home. So now that we've talked a little bit about, here's what's going on in our context, let's talk about what this means. So what? So, well, we're working and schooling at home, and that's the reality right now. And there is not a playbook for it. There is not a video to learn it in 5 minutes. There is no guide to help you know how to do that really well. So you really just have to play it by ear. And part of playing it by ear is really just listening very carefully to the needs of your family. So I noticed there were quite a bit of questions previously from the chamber that the chamber gathered for us in specifically related to academic support, having some concern about how do I support my child academically while they're doing school in my home. And the one most important thing that you really need to hold on to is that parents are partners. This is true every single day, every minute of every year, that parents are partners in school. Parents are partners to the child. Parents are partners to the teacher. So when it comes to anything academic, consider yourself a partner. And so it's really, really important to treat your partners really, really well. So when we think about the children that we have in our home, we really have to accept something as parents. Every single child is different. Accept it now, understand it now, and know it now. And the best thing that you can do is, because you haven't been in school with your children prior to this, what you really have to think about is, what does each of my children need? What do they need to be successful? They are the best champion of their needs. Asking them, listening to them, and acting on what they need is really important. Another really critical thing to consider is that for your children, consider the time that they are spending with direct instruction. And what I mean by that is when an adult is leading instruction with a child. So a really good rule of thumb to consider is that the number of years and age that your child is. I happen to have a 12-year-old and a 15-year-old in my house, a middle school and high schooler. The number of years and age is the number of minutes you really want to consider having direct instruction happening with your children. So if they are in a lesson where an adult is leading, the number of years and age is about the number of minutes they can handle successfully. And really know, I am talking about the average child. I am not talking about a child with special needs or a child with gifted needs. I'm talking about the average child with average biology and average ability. Essentially, the number of years and age is the number of minutes they can handle with direct instruction. The other thing to really, really accept and know is you are not their teacher. Do what you can. So when you're thinking about how to support your children academically, remember that you're not the teacher. And also know, rest assured, and there are many educators on this webinar who will reassure you about this, but you will not break them, you will not harm them, and you will not disassemble their brain. You're still going to support their learning. There's nothing you can do to harm their brain when you are doing all that you can to support them and what they have to accomplish. But remember, you are not their teacher. You didn't choose to homeschool them. Homeschooling is a choice. This is a crisis moment, and you are responding to that crisis as a partner supporting your child during this time. So it's really critical to remember that. So with that, I want to give you a couple of other things. And I would say if you're multitasking right now, this is the time to fully dive in and connect to the next couple of slides. So, we have a pandemic. We have to realize this is a new normal for us. So now what do we do? So let's talk a little bit about what folks in the field have offered. I asked educators all over the region and beyond to give me some thoughts about what's the one thing they would want to say to folks on this webinar. And so I want to share with you some of those tips. So the next two slides, I would say, are probably the meatiest, juiciest tips for you when you're thinking about how to balance work and school life in your home. So this is specifically for parents or caregivers, those who are ready to teach and support their children in the home. The most important thing you can do is do what we learn when we fly on a plane. When you get on a plane, you get a lot of safety advice, and one of those pieces of advice is give yourself oxygen first and then put the oxygen mask on your child. That is a good rule of thumb every day of life, but right now in this time of crisis, it's especially important. So a couple of things for you. You notice we started our conversation with a deep breath and relax your shoulders and just kind of center yourself. Self-care is the most important thing. And whatever that means to you, it's totally up to your definition, but just do it, whatever it is. If it's prayer, reflection, journaling, if it's exercise, whatever that thing is that you do to fuel your soul, do that thing every single day as you get ready to support your family inside your home. Another thing to consider, and I really heard this from a webinar recently through Dave and Rachel Hollis, thanks to my little sister who recommended them to me, but to limit your exposure to the news. And one of the reasons we want to do that is we want to think about what the intent of news is. The intent of news and news programs is to keep you coming back for more information. And they do it really well, and we're so thankful to have them as partners in our community. But it's really important to think about during your day how you limit your exposure to news. A lot of negative messages coming to you and your children can create negativity and can shift moods. And so it's really important to think about how much exposure that you have to the news and that your children have to the news. Check in with your kids. You heard Richard say that earlier. We'll say it time and time again. Check in with them. And I can tell you, I have a tween and a teen, and when I try to check in with them just with a question, I get a lot of pushback, and that's a really normal reaction for kids their age. But what I've found is that if I check in with them over food or while we're having fun, I get much better responses. And one of the things that we found as a family is when we sit at the table in close quarters with one another, you really can't escape. And we set that expectation that you don't leave the table till everyone's done, and everyone has to say something at the table. And you can do everything from share your roses and thorns, share your highlights. My son's an athlete, so I like to ask him to tell me about his highlight reel from the day. Check in over food and fun. Sit at the dinner table. It creates a camaraderie and a space where you have some positive interaction. And who doesn't love talking over food? It ends up in a lot of giggles in our house. Connect with other parents. So this is also a lifeline for you while you're taking care of children in your home. Connect with other parents. The things that you're experiencing are totally normal, and they are experiencing it too. And it's great to connect with them about what's working, what's not working, or just to commiserate. I know a lot of people are doing coffee chats in the morning with other grown-ups, at night, some cocktail hours. Sometimes folks are doing lunch by Zoom. Whatever that is, your virtual interaction maintains that connectivity. So create some of that connectivity for yourself. Make sure to plan fun with your kids every single day, whatever that looks like, and let your kids be a partner in planning that fun. If it's a movie, awesome. If it's a show, great. If it's spike ball outside in the front yard, basketball, if it's going on a walk, plan fun with your kids. And I do really mean plan it with them. Let them be a partner in that planning experience. And then I'll say that in terms of production, there are a couple of things that I have found that are really helping with production, because when all is said and done, you have to produce. Some of you are producing for your professional life. And I've found that if I plan in 25-minute chunks to produce at high levels and communicate that to my family, we create space for each other where production can still happen. You can still execute on your projects and still have some time to check in with your kids as well. So this really is about your self-care, preparing yourself and supporting yourself in being successful when you are planning for work and planning for schooling in your home. Excuse me. I'm gonna grab a sip of water while we transition to this next slide. So again, let's face facts, let's face reality. You're at home, it's a time of crisis. You didn't choose to school at home, but you are choosing to be a partner in the education of your children. So you're schooling at home in a time of crisis. A few things that will help you to remember that this is a situation for yourself. One is be patient with yourself, manage your expectations of yourself, your children, and their teachers. Have patience. Grace goes a really long way. It's probably the most valuable currency right now. So giving grace, extending grace, and accepting grace when it's given. Something that's really important as a partner is to communicate regularly with the partners. Your children are your first partner right there in your home, but their teachers are the other partner. So reach out to your child's teachers, all of them if you have to ensure that you are supporting your child to the best of your ability, and that you're also letting the teacher know that you have a specific situation happening in your home, or that you have a specific need that has to be taken care of. Some of the folks that gave me responses about what they would share today, all of them said, set a schedule with all family members in mind. So some of you will hear that as routines. Some of you will hear that as habits. All of that is really important right now. And what we found as a family is that if we talk through what our schedule looks like for the week, like on Sunday, it helps us to plan out what we need to do together and how we need to separate time and space for getting our work done. The other thing is ensuring that you have routines in place and that you honor them. It's really important to make sure that your children are still getting up, they're taking a shower, they are brushing their teeth. All of those same routines apply today. You might have a later start, and that's okay, but having some normalcy in your day happens quite a bit around routines, eating schedules, planning work schedules, those kinds of things. Except that when you're schooling at home, do what you can. Do what you can. There are limitations in every single home, and there are limitations in every single school. Do what you can and accept it and communicate it regularly to your kids. Connect to those services in schools that you know you might need or you didn't know you could reach out for, but now you know you can. Schools are still functioning. They are functioning remotely. All of the wonderful people who have been trained for 12, 14, 16, 20 years to support your children's educational life, they are in those buildings. They are in their homes as well, and they are ready to connect with you to support your children. Not to mention the fact that they really, really miss your kids. That is what I heard consistently from the teachers in the field as well, is they truly miss being with your kids. So connect to those services back in schools. When you're thinking about what your children are doing in terms of tasks, let your children lead. Let your children lead. They know the routines from school. They know the expectations from school, and many of the things are applying in the remote experience with their teachers and in their classrooms. Let your children lead when it comes to choosing an order of tasks. When all is said and done, if they have some choice, they are more likely to commit to getting it done and to commit fully to understanding and learning what they can. And then the last thing I really just want to highlight is limit the non-instructional time on devices. And I'll just give you a parent's perspective. There's tons of research about this that you could read, but a parent's perspective for me is that when I have observed my children doing something on their device, like playing a game, it really sucks them in, and it can suck them in for all day if I let them. So it's really important to think about, what do you need? What I've learned as well is that it's a mood changer for my children when they've been disconnected from reality and connected in their virtual game space for long periods of time. It truly can shift their moods. So in our home, when we're talking about fun time or game time on devices, there are limits. So really think about listening and observing your children, recognize what you see happening in terms of patterns after they've been on devices, and think about how you can intervene to help support a better mood, a more positive mood, or a transition from game life to real life. So really just kind of listen and observe what your children are doing, and let that be a bit of a guide for you when you think about how you limit time on devices. So now that we've talked all about that, let's just think at a really high level, what will our children remember from this entire experience? And I want to give you a lesson I learned from my mom, Ravae Villafranca. Something I learned from her is there were times in my life as a child when I would say, I'm just not feeling right. Or she would recognize in me that I was stressed or sad or frustrated. So she would ask me this very specific question: Which thing is out of balance in your life? Is it mind? Is it body? Is it spirit? So as a parent, reflect on that for yourself. Again, give oxygen to yourself first. What's out of alignment? And for some of us, all of it is out of alignment right now. But for your child, when you're watching them, you can use that same simple question. You know what? Have you done something to help grow your brain? What did you do to move your body today? Have you done some reflection in your journal or some time with prayer or meditation? Did you do some yoga today? Have you done some quiet time in reflection today? So think about how you could use this overarching guide to help support your child and yourself in this unique time in our history. I want to give some words from a really wise administrator, Jennifer Lomas, who's the principal of Cerna Elementary, shared this with me, and I just love it, so I thought I would share it with you as well. Memories before math, relationships before reading, sanity before science and social studies. Do what your family needs. There is no one right answer for this, but when all is said and done, what will your children remember from this experience? Will they remember that they had lots of time with you, the cuddles they had with you, the discussions you had over basketball, the interesting explorations you did on a walk? Even if you're walking in your backyard, did you paint something new? Did you do something new in terms of a game? How many games of rummy did we play while we were stuck at home? What is it that your children will remember from this experience? And remember that your relationship is the most important thing that you can support and honor and think about every single day. The relationship you have with them will continue beyond this period. It is what you started with, and it is what you have beyond now. So remember how to maintain that and really ensure that you are loving on your kids, you're creating memories with your kids. The academic progress will come. Don't worry, you can't harm them in their brain, you can't harm their learning. The only thing you can do is really elevate it by loving on them as with all you've got. So with that in mind, I wanted to share one last bit, and that is there are tons of resources in a lot of different spaces. Our service center happens to be housing quite a bit of resources, and I'm just going to be honest, it's big and it's a lot. But from this webinar, I think the things that will most support you is when you go to this link, and you can see that it's at the top, it's tinyurl.com/ESC20resources. When you go there, I would start with these 3 tabs. One is adult self-care, how you care for yourself, how you can think about caring for yourself as an adult. The second is there's a plethora of parent resources, and these are about parenting as a partner with the school or in student growth outside of school time. And the third is instructional resources. While the instructional resources are built with teachers in mind, it's another source of information for you as a parent when you're thinking about what else you can do to support your child, when you're thinking about things like enrichment, or maybe I need to do something in one particular content that they haven't talked about, and I really want to think about social studies. So there are tons of resources there to support you, and we add to them nearly daily. So keep going back to it. If you don't find what you need, there are lots of contacts there to support you as well. So with that, I wanted to leave you with just those nuggets, knowing that we have a very short period of time to be together, but knowing also that as I was gathering these resources, we probably could have talked for 6 hours about tips. But I think we can be a little more strategic and work specifically with the questions that you may have. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to our chamber folks to continue the conversation.
Thank you, Ravae. Well done. You're right. This thing was full of nuggets. And I think these are all nuggets that we can use to reassure ourselves that as parents, we're doing the right thing. You talked about just some tips about instruction. Age equals minutes of instruction. What a great thing to have in my hip pocket as a parent or as an administrator, to tell my team to be easy on themselves and use that as a rule of thumb. So that's fantastic. I love the fact that you are not the teacher. Do what you can. I think we're acting as teacher, but we're not the teacher. And so we need to do what we can and not be so hard on ourselves. So that's fantastic too. And I love your example of using roses and thorns at the dinner table. You know, tell me what was good and what wasn't so good. And let's really build upon that and maybe incorporate that into the learning environment. So very, very well done, Ravae. Thank you so much. So we have a ton of questions. Sure. So we have a ton of questions. And let me start with the first one. So my fourth grader can whiz through her daily assignments in 1 hour and reading for another 1 hour. So 2 hours max of schoolwork, and now I find myself getting after her for not doing any other school activities for the rest of the day. How do I overcome how fast she gets her work done?
That's a really, really great question. I have to be honest, I had the exact same experience with my 7th and 10th grader. So here's the reality about that. The question is, how do I overcome the fact that she gets her work done? Don't overcome that fact. You don't have to do any single thing about that. It's perfectly fine if she finishes her work really quickly. What I want you to think about is asking a couple of questions to help you know how to move next with that. So, you can ask her things like, teach me what you learned. And if that sounds really robust and it sounds really good and strategic from your child, let it go. All is good, I promise. But if you really want to think about how to enrich your child's life, think about what other resources you could get at your fingertips. So I shared some a little earlier from our website, but also think about talking to your child about how they can explore some pleasure activities. What are some things they can do that they have either always wanted to do, have thought about doing and haven't done yet? What are some other things that are pleasurable to them that you might engage with? So I can give an example. My daughter has wanted to try photography for a really long time. So I gave her my camera, kind of an expensive camera, and I said, here are the rules, here's the safety, go for it. Go try your hand at it. And so she's doing that now. And while you might not have had time for that in a regular day, we do right now. And so think about that. The other thing to think about too is what are the other parts of her life that she might be able to enrich that she hasn't been able to do. So for example, my daughter does music lessons at school. I typically do not see any of that at all. I just pay the bill and I'm done. But for my daughter, she engaged with her practice partner and with her tutor, and now she has a weekly oboe lesson. So think about where you can engage your kids in other places that they might want to work on or that they get to choose to do. And then the last couple of things on this is to think about maybe co-developing with your child, maybe a choice board. What are the top 10 things you could do right now when you're bored? What are the top 10 things you can do when you finish your work? Think about what you expect and what your child also can choose to do, because what they choose to do, they're more likely to engage in deeply, and they may do that for hours at a time. It's perfectly fine. Great question.
Excellent. Thank you, Ravae. The next question that we have, my 9th grader completes her assignments for the week on Monday and then only wants to play Animal Crossing the rest of the week. I can't motivate her to do anything extra. Should I be worried? What can I do at this age?
Yeah, I think this is a really hard one for parents, and there's no right answer. So there are just some things just to raise. So I'm just going to raise some ideas for you to think about, and then your relationship with your daughter is the most important thing. So first things first, what is Animal Crossing bringing to her life that she so wants to engage so deeply? And so what I've discovered from my daughter on this same exact question is that Animal Crossing is a social experience for her. It is a place where she gets to collaborate with her friends. She will share out later with her friends. They'll text while they're playing. It's a social experience for her. And so I have to decide if I was going to let my daughter go to a party or the skating rink, what would be okay with me? How much would be okay with me? So I am okay with my kids digging into a social activity for about an hour during the day if there's time, if all their other things are done. And that's the other part of it is, where does that fit into your daily life? What do you expect any day of the week from your child? For me, I expect that their chores are done during the day, that I've checked in that those chores are done. Is your homework done that you expected to be done today? How well did you do on it? If all of those other checks are done, then it's time for some game time in our house. And so it's really thinking about, what does this bring to your daughter's life? Talk a little bit about it. Even ask to play if you want to, so you can get a sense of what it really means, but it also gives you another way to talk. Just talk about what's going on, another way to ask those open-ended questions. So think about what it means to your daughter. And the question about should you be worried about this, wanting to spend the whole week on Animal Crossing? Well, sure. I mean, yes, we should be worried about it if they want to spend a lot of hours every single day with Animal Crossing. But really the whole reality is you want to think about what does it do to or for your daughter, and think about how much time. For an hour, does it fuel what she needs? Does it give her that social interactivity that she needs? And an hour is healthy and she comes out of it ready to be engaged with the family again. So think about what's happening, observe what's happening for your child. So that's one thing to think about. Now, as a ninth grader, I would say a ninth grader, 14, 15-year-old, they're really looking for control. They want control over their life. And when they don't have control, they will retreat to a game all day long, or they will retreat to their room all day long, or they'll engage in something else they might want to do that they might not have been able to do. And so sometimes you have to force structures to help make that happen, like y'all have to go outside for an hour. I don't care what you do out there. You can't be on a device. You can't be on your phone. You can't be playing a game. You just have to be outside. If that's your expectation, set the structure for it and make it happen and help them disconnect. But that's true of any change in structure from one activity to another.
Well, that takes discipline too, right? So we as parents
Yeah.
need to make sure we have the discipline to say, well, you're going to be outside for an hour, please do so. So that's good. All right. So, and by the way, I didn't even know what Animal Crossing was, so I'm glad that I'm learning as well. So next, I'm in a position where I need to work, to report to work every single day. The only time I have to directly be with my third grader and ninth grader is in the evening. I want to give their school work more attention, but there aren't enough hours in the day. How do I gauge what impact this is having on my children's educational progress?
Yeah, that's a real tough question. And so, I go back to that real basic statement, do what you can, and don't stress about what you can't do. Do communicate those. So where you feel like you'd want to be doing more, communicate with your child's teachers about what you could be doing. And I would say that's probably easier with your third grade teacher. It is easy with your ninth grade. That just means more teachers that you'll be communicating with, but communicate with them about any limitations that might impede your child from engaging fully with them. You're not going to hurt your child. You're not going to hurt their learning. You're not going to hurt their brain, not for a long term, by offering support where you can, but just do what you can. Something that might help you in this time is to think about planning with them for the week, getting a sense of when they're doing their work. What does your plan look like? What does their plan look like? And what can you do together? Sometimes you can solve problems together. Think about how you're checking in, and if you're having to be remote from them, how do you check in with them in a way that they will respond, and set expectations for that response. For my children, I tell them, if I text you, I need a text back pretty immediately, or I'm going to go into crazy mom mode and think the worst has happened, and I will start to hunt for you. So I just set that context with my kids. It's a little on the crazy side, but it works. And so I want my kids to respond when I reach out to them. I think that will yield gains for the future. I'm hoping it will. But really set that expectation with your child. If you want to check in with them remotely, how might you do that? How might you do that from reporting from your work site, if that's possible? And if it's not, how can you provide that check-in opportunity for them when you get back to them in the evening? How can you make that a loving and healthy experience for them? They are not going to want to talk about what math they learned and what reading they learned unless they just willingly share that. So just think about in your time while you're cooking, in your time while you're setting the table or eating dinner with them, or just talking about getting ready for bath time, whatever it is that you're doing, just talk to them casually about what they're learning. What you hear in response is going to tell you how well they are learning what they're learning or how deeply they're engaging with the schoolwork that they're doing. But really just love on them. When you get home, love on them. That's what they really want. They want to feel safe and secure.
Excellent. That's great. So next question, Ravae. This is very practical. I am an accountant, not a scientist. How do I supplement STEM education and activities from home?
Oh, this is such a good question. And I have probably 3 hours worth of resources to share with you. But here's what I just really want you to think about. There are resources that are web-based, resources that might be face-to-face based with you and your child that you can access. There are tons of them on our website that I shared with you a little bit earlier, and there are many others that are being devised. So if you kind of look out in the community is sharing the resources that they are either creating virtually or already had virtually that you can engage with. So there are lots of STEM focused organizations within our community, and they all have something amazing for you to experience while you're at home with no resources that you'd have to tap into. There's digital badging opportunities, there's coding online. So think about asking your child to lead in this situation again. So when you want them to have a STEM-based experience, that's really an interdisciplinary problem-solving experience. Ask your child what they'd like to dig in more deeply into. Maybe think about what they've done at school already that they'd like to extend or do again or dig more deeply into, and let that be your guide for how you hunt for resources. There are tons and tons of resources, and I actually, as part of the Alamo STEM ecosystem, our informal education group put together some STEM resources. So I'll share that back out with your team, Richard, so you can post that with this PowerPoint as well.
Excellent, Ravae. That's fantastic. Here's another one that, of course, is a challenge for all of us. So our biggest obstacle is finding time for both of my school-age children and I to use our single device. Some teachers have required specific time frames to attend class, and they won't always line up with everyone's schedule. What can we do?
That's such a great question, and it is the reality for many families in our community, and that's when we are connected. So hallelujah that you are connected. That's wonderful. So the most important thing you can do is, if there are finite schedules for some of your children, plan that out in kind of a master schedule. So again, have a family schedule in place so that you know what everybody needs. You might have to devise a device schedule so that you know who needs it, when they need it. And then the other part of that is really just to communicate with your teachers. The teachers of your children need to understand that you are a one device household and that you might need some alternate ways to engage. So really think about how you can communicate to really get some support from your school to help you know how to adjust. Also check in with your school about checkout processes for devices. There are many campuses that are looking for devices to provide to students. So check in with your school about that opportunity as well. See if there are other devices you could check out and use. But when that's not possible, devise that schedule and let it work for you.
Excellent. The other challenge that I've heard is just connectivity, Wi-Fi, internet access. Some of our school districts, of course, are not quite as robust. What would you recommend in those situations?
Great question. So every single school district that we have talked to is planning two approaches to support students. One is virtual or remote instruction, and the second is sort of a paper packet, something that you can pick up from school, take home, complete, and take back. So if you are not able to connect with your device, that's the first thing I would say is reach out to your school, let them know, and then pick up those paper packets. They all set schedules, and they're communicating those schedules on Twitter, on Facebook, parent email, on Remind, text, whatever your natural communication point is for your schools, that's where you're going to find out about packet pickup and drop off. So let that help you. And when connectivity is an issue, I can tell you at community level, all of us are coming together to try and solve for connectivity. It's a really, really big problem to solve for our entire community. But when you don't have that regular connectivity, engage another way. Pick up that paper packet and let that be your guide.
Excellent. Thank you, Ravae. So here's another interesting one. I keep hearing about the importance of routine, and of course you touched on it a little bit too. But my work schedule is so erratic that it's hard to incorporate a routine for my kids. Sometimes I end up helping them whenever I have a few minutes to spare. How concerned should I be about this impact on their academic growth?
I would say release your concern for academic growth. This is a moment of crisis in our history. Release your concern for academic growth. Academic growth is going to happen, and when they are back to a regular school environment with their teacher will do whatever is needed to support your child's academic growth. So release that from your responsibility. You are not responsible for that alone. You're a partner in that. And so your partner is your teacher and your child. So that's one thing that's really important. If you are not in control of your schedule and the schedule is erratic, be real about that with your kids. They have to understand that. And the age of your kids will really impact that. There are times when we are on calls just like this and a child will run behind, or one of my teens may walk behind me and grab something off the printer. It's a new reality right now. It's temporary, and it's going to pass. But just know that, that you are not solely responsible for your child's academic growth, and you've got a lot of well-schooled, well-trained people who are totally focused on that. So release that from your concern. You're a partner in that concern. You're not solely responsible.
That's wonderful, Ravae, because I indeed have, as I've been interacting this way with my team, one of the kids will run behind, the husband or wife will run behind, and that's the way it is now, and that's okay. And I think that's the main message is it's okay. We're doing it together and we're figuring it out together. So we're getting close to the end of our time. I've got another interesting question I'll ask you. So my child is on an individualized education plan, an IEP. He was doing really well in school with all the academic support services. His school is trying to accommodate now, but the reality is my son's interest and confidence has plummeted. What can I do?
That is such a beautiful question, and thank you for asking it. So an IEP is a specific plan for a student who is receiving special education services. It's very important that you stay in close communication with your school and those that have been serving your child previous to this experience, right? So keep connected with them, engage in whatever services that they can provide to you, and if you have to design alternate ways to get those services and support to your child, do that. Make that happen as often as you can. To kind of come back just a little bit though, is to focus on your child. When you see moments of your child feeling a lack of confidence or losing interest, or you feel like they might be disconnecting, really think about checking in on their social and emotional health. They are disconnected from their friends, so they don't have anyone to just complain with. Sometimes we need people just to vet and really vent and vet with, right? And our kids don't have that right now. They have no one to complain to. And so it's really important that you just hear them out. And one of the things that's really important in good listening is just to hear fully, say back to them what you heard, and help them to continue making sense of what they're feeling. Sometimes they can't make sense of the feeling and they just need to get it out. And so really think about where that factors in to maybe a disengagement or a lack of motivation. Sometimes they just need to connect with someone, and really think about connecting on your school services. If there are counseling, I know there are counseling services in every school. There are nurse services in every school, special education services. Seek those same services out in the way you would have if your child was sitting in a school desk today. So continue reaching out and asking for that support of your schools.
Excellent, excellent. And so again, we're getting close, but boy, oh boy, we've got such great questions. Here's another one, Ravae. How will we ensure our children are receiving the proper materials to be successful in moving forward to the following grade level? As well, how is it being determined who will pass on to a higher grade and who will need to repeat the current grade level? Very practical question.
That is a practical question, and I can tell you those answers right now are being grappled with by every school district. So every school district in the last month that I've been speaking to, and in our Bexar County area, there are about 17, they are all grappling with the grading conversation, with graduation, with student growth. The interesting thing about this time is some of the conditions that used to exist are released temporarily for our kids this spring. So as you've all heard, there's no STAR testing, there's no end of course testing happening right now. So some of those things that might have caused a lot of angst about your students' progress forward, they are not there right now. And I can tell you across systems that's happening, the flexibilities that are being created to help support students in this unique time, moving from one grade level to another. When all is said and done, the most important source you can go to for those answers is going to be your school leader, and your teachers. They are the ones that are going to give you the most strategic answer based on that district's perspective. Every district is different. There is no one right answer. Every district is responding to their community and the needs of the kids in that community. So really drive right back to your campus in terms of that question and ask strategically, what is going to happen? How is it going to happen? But also give a little grace, because there's a lot that happens around those kinds of decisions. When you create flexibilities like this with the state support, there are waiver processes that schools have to engage in. There are board conversations that schools have to engage in. So it may take some time to get a black and white answer for you, but the best answers will come from your school leader and the teacher that is serving your children.
Excellent. Thank you, Ravae. So I'll close with one last one that's kind of a region-wide for sure. So is Region 20 able to collect any data on children who might be missing during this time? That is, no parents or guardians available to monitor and ensure that they are able to do their schoolwork at home?
That is such a great question. So Region 20 individually is not capturing that data, but we are part of a lot of community-wide conversations because it truly, you know, when we say it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a village to connect all children too. And so that's really important to know. So we're working in several spaces. I really want to highlight the Digital Inclusion Alliance and the City of San Antonio, who are working really hard to help create connectivity for students. So as a service center, we're not capturing that data, but our community is. And so we're really trying to figure out where that's happening, who is least served, who needs to be most connected, and how can we create resources or reallocate resources that might serve that specific need. So know that the community is working on that problem, and it's going to take all of us helping for that problem. So a service center, we are not tracking that data, but we know our digital inclusion alliance.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Ravae. Well, with that, we'll go ahead and close the question and answer session. I want to again thank you. Hand clap to you. You did fantastic as always. And in fact, this is the second time I've heard this presentation. Of course, we heard it the first time at our Education and Workforce Development Council meeting, which is when I knew that we had to put this on so that the rest of the world can hear it, because it's so content rich. You're such a great professional in this space. So thank you for joining us. I think you've just given a lot of people a lot of calmness and confidence that they're on the right track. So again, thank you, Ravae, to you and all the folks at Region 20. I want to remind everybody that the questions will be posted on our website, as will those questions that we were not able to get asked. We'll submit them to Ravae and ask her to answer them. And all the PowerPoints, all the information you heard will be posted on our SA Chamber rapidresponse.org website. It's a new website that we just posted to help us with all the COVID stuff. It's got a ton of information, so we'll ask you to please go there and tune in and find additional information. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we'll close. I'll ask you to be safe. I'll ask you to be kind and to be healthy. From all of us here at the Chamber, thank you very much, and we are adjourned.